So good evening everybody, it's actually almost good night. Anyone who knows me knows that I don't drink, but today's shenanigans and this week's shenanigans, will they or won't they, with Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk, has taken several turns and twists, and we've got quite an interesting situation now where the Ukrainian, truly fantastic fighter in Alexander Usyk has called Tyson Fury's bluff. I've always favoured Fury to win that fight. I think Fury's a fun fighter, he's the best of his generation, but ultimately we are now in 2023 and I don't think fighters of this generation could ever be considered one of the true greats due to so many different things. Activity or lack of activity and longevity being one of them. And what we're seeing now is kind of proving that point. But ultimately, you can only beat what's in front of you. Or in this case, you might not be able to beat what's not in front of you. And I think that's where we're settling down right now. So, I just thought it was such an interesting move from Usyk. When I saw Fury say 70-30, and that percentage is going to go down 1% a day every time you don't accept the offer, I thought that was such a poor move from Fury. It sounded to me like he clearly didn't want the fight for whatever reasons. And I'm not going to be one of those who labels the fact that he thinks he'll get beat as being one of them. I think Fury is a hell of a lot more complex than that, but he's not somebody who truly believes any man can beat him in a ring. However, when I saw that, I was wondering, because we saw recent snippets of Fury in, obviously, the Jake Paul-Tommy Fury fight over in Saudi, and he didn't look great to me. He didn't look in great shape. He looked quite wired. And I know Tyson's never going to be a body beauty, but sometimes at least he has a healthy glow about his face, and he didn't seem to have that kind of glow over in Saudi. And I've wondered now if Usyk's caught him off guard. Usyk has absolutely been training hard. His manager, his promoter, has come on and said that today, that he's been in camp ever since December, really, when this fight was talked about. And you only have to look at him to know he's that consummate athlete. So then Fury has responded anyway, moving on. Fury's responded to, and if I look distracted, it's because I'm in a few WhatsApp groups about the boxing and various other things, and every time I start to speak, a message pops up. That's how many people are actually talking about what Alexander Usyk has done tonight. And now we've seen Fury's response. Calling someone gappy-toothed and ugly, I mean, it's playground stuff. You expect this from Tyson Fury, but I don't know. I mean, Tyson Fury's not Brad Pitt, so maybe he should not be calling anybody ugly. And I'm not suggesting he is, by the way, but it's just classless. Tyson Fury does this to me all the time. There'll be moments I absolutely love him, and then moments I just shake my head and I just think, you know, that's such a crass, classless thing to do. Anyway, moving on, because I'm jumping around, but I am distracted by these WhatsApps pinging. I should have turned them off before I did this video. Do I think the fight will happen? Because ultimately that's the big question now, and everybody's been saying they think it will happen now, and it has to happen because Tyson Fury will make it happen because he's backed into a corner and Usyk's called his bluff. People who think that haven't been clearly watching Tyson Fury for the last few years. First of all, Tyson's his own man. He does whatever he wants, whatever the mood takes him. Obviously, we know he is bipolar. He has lots of issues. And I can only describe the episode we saw earlier on of this 70-30 calling people names as just Tyson just being on one of his episodes and just being quite disrespectful and quite almost godlike in terms of his ego has just gone into hyperdrive right now. Okay, the big question, Julian McGowan boxing predictions. As you know, it's not always about fights. I call certain things wrong, who doesn't? But I generally get things right, such as the Conor Ben situation or the Clomahen or whatever you want to call him. I think I've generally called that all the way through and called some other things. So I'm going to go on record right now and say what I said several months ago, that Fury and Usyk doesn't happen, or certainly doesn't happen April the 29th. I don't think there's enough time for that fight to happen, but I don't think it's right for Fury at this moment. I think Usyk's caught him off guard, and Tyson effectively has tried to price himself out of the fight because he's not in shape. Now, some fighters have been a little bit out of shape. They can whip themselves together in 6 to 7 weeks. But boxing this day and age is very, very different. You can't just train for 6 or 7 weeks and go into lockdown. You've got to promote the event. You've got to go on the world tour. You've got to do all of these things that take you away from training. And generally fighters have 12 to 14 weeks for these, what we call mega fights. I don't think Fury's in shape. I don't think he wants to fight. I don't think he's scared of USYK. But ultimately, his behaviour as what he keeps calling the lineal heavyweight champion, the #1 heavyweight in the world, is pretty questionable. I always wonder, and I always go back to those ages when I say, what would Rocky Marciano have said about all this? What would Jack Dempsey have said about all this? Who knows? Maybe Jack Johnson would have loved it, certainly an outspoken fighter, and Ali was. You can imagine Ali on social media. He would have broke the internet had Ali been around today. Again, obviously, often I kind of diversify when I'm talking. I go on these little tangents because I don't do scripts. I don't always think about what I'm going to say, just a general theme. Again, Fury and USYK won't happen April the 29th. USYK will take an interim fight. Fury will probably knock over somebody as well. And then they'll look to talk about the fight and talk again and talk again and talk again and talk again for the next 6 months. Will they, won't they? We're invariably what boxing's shown us is, at some point now, we don't get heavyweight championship fights for all the belts. Someone often gets beat before such a thing happens. And people generally don't want to share the spoils that they've got, and they're happy to keep their own little bit of turf and to keep their belts and to get easier fights for a little bit less money, but more frequently. Boxing is a business. Boxing is a business more than it's ever been. Disappointed in Fury, massively disappointed in Fury. Absolutely love the post that USYK put out there. I still think Fury beats him, but Fury would have to be his absolute best. He's clearly not ready, mentally, physically, emotionally. He's not in a great place. So don't listen to the hype. The fight's not going to happen right now. And we'll have to just wait and see if it ever does. Over 20 years since we had an undisputed champion at heavyweight. And I keep saying the same thing and people think I'm like a stuck record. These are very, very different times. Boxing is in a different place to what it was. Often fights don't get made. And that's not just because of the promoters, the managers, the networks. Often the fighters have to look themselves in the mirror and know they're not truly testing themselves. And I think that's the case for Tyson Fury. Yes, he had 3 really great fights, or very competitive fights, or very dangerous fights, certainly before the bell with Wilder. I thought he beat a very faded Klitschko, but did a very good job over in Germany. But other than that, the CV is pretty thin. And that's such a shame because he really could be a tremendous heavyweight champion. And instead, we've got somebody who runs his mouth off and doesn't really think about the consequence of what he's saying. So there we go. Hope you enjoyed this bit of a rant, really. You're probably drowning in IFL and Gareth Davies and everybody else's breakdowns or talking about this fight right now. They certainly got there before me. It's a bit late for me. I've just had a hot bath. I've had a long day, been decorating after work, and I'm beat. But I just thought I'd add my 2 penn'orth, which is to summarise for the 300th time. The fight won't happen, not now. They're going different directions, and I'll probably suggest that one of them gets beat before it happens. I do think we'll end up seeing Fury against Anthony Joshua. Maybe each of those fighters will have a loss on their record at the time. It might be 5 years down the line. But boxing 2023, we don't get what we want. But as Mick Jagger said, you can't always get what you want. But if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. It's only boxing. Don't take it too seriously. Good evening, guys.
Porky's Corner is proud to be sponsored by Spartan Site Solutions. They are specialists in civil engineering and demolition contracts for the construction industry. Interested parties should visit their website or contact Porky's Corner for a referral at porkycorner@mail.com.